Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this next installment of the Cloud ERP Circle of Excellence. Now, this program is a combination or a mashup of expertise featuring Peter Jekyll from HandsFree ERP, Wayne Sadin, who is the CIO of PriceSmart, and Kenny Mullican, who is the CIO of Paragon Films. Now, beyond their roles as CIOs here, the other thing that both Kenny and Wayne have in common is they are members of the Dynamics Communities environment, number one. And number two, they are also practitioner, analysts, and advisory board members on Acceleration Economy, an analyst firm that focuses on advisory, marketing, and event services for mid-market and enterprise companies. Now, what we're doing in this program today is breaking down some of the myths and realities about building business requirements documents for a cloud ERP project, a very important process that you need to go through to ensure that you're aligning your business strategy with your technology execution, especially when you're working with a myriad of partners and ISVs and others that are a part of this ERP modernization project for your business. Now, Kenny, I would like to drop into this wave first off with you, sir, because you have just gone through a very big migration at Paragon Films onto the Dynamics 365 or D365 finance and supply chain platform as a cloud ERP implementation for your organization. Now, as you started this modernization project, how did you capture and document some of the business requirements, both in working with some of your other, executive buying committee members and those sorts of things in the organization? And then how did you start to bring those things to life in this project?
Yeah, well, the biggest answer to that is that we did a whole project, an assessment project with the ERP vendor before we started the actual implementation project. And the purpose of that was in order to both look at what might we need to do new or different than what we'd been doing before, but also to try to capture what were all of the customizations that had been made to our on-premises Dynamics AX 2012 system. And so part of it was a code analysis. Most of it was a lot of deep dives with the user communities that would be using it to try to find out what were the processes that they did, how did they do it, what was unique about our company or our industry, and then just a lot of really detailed document writing to try to capture what all those requirements were. And one of the problems with that approach that we didn't really realize until later is that depending on how you guide people through that process of asking the questions, you can miss a lot of things. If you say, when you do this, is there anything missing from this process? And when you do this, do you see any missing from this? And they look at it and they go, no, that all seems fine. But they didn't bring up this process, all these other things that people do every day. And so, unfortunately, there's an awful lot that can get missed in that way of just asking people to tell us what you need.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because having lived through, 3 or 4 of my own personal ERP projects, modernization projects inside organizations, it always ends up creating this almost creep aspect of the project once you start going, because you miss this process, you miss this task, you miss this requirement as you're going through this. Wayne, as you think about this, for organizations, you both manage big modernizations for and ones that you're currently going through with PriceSmart. How do you work with other CXOs, other executives inside the company to try to make sure this, not only you're getting their feedback, right, and context on this project, but also the waterfall effect, to Kenny's point, of everybody else in the organization that's utilizing these?
Yeah, so I can't really talk about my current organization because I've only been CIO there since the 1st of July, but let me give you some background. You've got to get things working between the silos. Remember, business is organized by silo. I'm finance, I'm accounting, I'm whatever. The processes go horizontally. They go from the customer to the customer, potentially, or the buyer to the seller. And so you've got to be able to break down those barriers among the silos. That's the first thing. And the second thing is people are really good at doing what they do. I had a class recently, and the facilitator said, organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they get today. How do you change to get new results? And so ERP is one of those classic projects where you don't want to pave the cow path. You don't want to automate the bad stuff that you've been doing for X number of years. And so the most effective thing I've seen, and I've been in this role and I've hired people, is to have somebody between the vendor, the implementation partner, and the user who can say to the user, have you thought of that? Have you seen that? Can we re-engineer this process? Can say to the vendor, don't just talk speeds and feeds. Show me how you can solve that problem over there. And to the implementation partner, say, there's a question you haven't asked. So if you're going to spend X number of $1 million on an ERP, spend a little more to bring in a seasoned ERP expert, whether at the partner or a separate expert to ride herd on the whole thing. And then make sure that everybody's writing the requirements, not by looking at a rearview mirror, but by looking ahead at what the business needs to be in the future.
So I think that's such a key point, Kenny, relative to what you were just talking about as well, because it is easy to get in the habit of looking backwards and saying, well, we've always done it this way. Therefore, okay, now I need to say that's the requirement that we need going into the future, as opposed to where the business is going, how those processes could evolve to be more effective, more efficient, and more. Also really like, Wayne, that troika approach of how you're actually managing the process, right? With thinking about the platform, the partners, and more. And the users and more. Kenny, this kind of begs directly into some of the work that you've done with folks like Peter in the past and others with modernization projects as a partner. Peter, as we think about the role that HandsFree ERP plays and some of the things that you've really recognized in helping organizations through this BRD process, fill us in on your take.
So I'm working on an ERP implementation currently where the previous partner did a requirements analysis that cost $700,000. That's not unusual. The problem with the way those are executed is they're executed off of some standard set of lists, and you sit somebody, a user down, and you go down the list, and those lists are usually executed by junior consultants because they're the cheapest ones that can fill out the questions, that can answer the questions. The issue there is the lists don't drill beyond those things that Kenny and Wayne talk about that are outside the scope of the list. And so that entire process, to me, is broken because what happens then is those lists generate the implementation plans, and then at some point, those implementation plans have to be completely changed because we missed critical things. So to me, the solution is that there haven't been any automated tools that understand what actually happens in a workflow in a company and how do we speed up that process of collecting data. So we have a couple of tools that help with those two scenarios. And most importantly for me is, you know, what I think Wayne said is you don't know what you don't know, is get the requirements down quickly and efficiently. Have a deeper understanding with some tools of what your actual requirements are, and then get your hands on the software as quickly as possible, because design work and having your hands on the software is completely different. So to me is better tools to gather data, understand what your actual requirements are, and getting your hands on the software as quickly as possible and cut out all of that front heavy load of spending a lot of money.
I think everybody would agree, Peter, that the idea of not spending $700,000 to create a requirements document that's based on older school rules is a good thing to avoid, right? I think everybody would agree with that statement. I think the bigger issue is starting to dissect what some of those tools are and making sure those tools are actually modernized to your industry, to your business, to the types of things that you're trying to do. So it'll be good to unpack some of those things, Peter, as we continue to go forward. Give us your top 2 to 3 things, Peter. You know, you mentioned get your hands on the software and that sort of thing. What are your top 2 to 3 tips for somebody that's just really starting this process of creating business requirements for a project like this?
Yeah, so taking a couple of the thoughts from the folks that are on here, if you're going to be interviewed by a junior with a list of questions, a junior consultant with a list of questions, you're going down the wrong pathway. There are people in the industry that understand your requirements as well as you do because they've been in there multiple times. So getting that high level individual, it's absolutely critical. Second, getting your hands on the software as quickly as possible. And then on the shameless pitch front, we have a couple of tools that we're bringing to bear, as part of this ERP excellence. One is to ferret out all of those activities that don't surface themselves inside of a questionnaire, and the other is a cloud-based tool to gather requirements quickly and efficiently, and literally cut about 60% of that upfront cost of a typical requirements gathering project, and literally cut 60% of that cost and time out.
Big deal, cutting all those costs out and also streamlining that process, right, Wayne, to be able to do these things in a more efficient and effective way. We will be exploring some of those things at the Community Summit North America event that's running October 15 to 20 at Charlotte, North Carolina, in our Cloud ERP Circle of Excellence Lounge that we're going to be hosting. You'll be able to find me and Peter, Wayne, and Kenny, and others here in this environment. And we'll have links to that here through the in the show notes of this program. Wayne, over to you. You mentioned some great points there. What are those top 2 to 3 tips that you want somebody to really grasp onto here from this discussion?
Well, I'm going to echo what Peter said. In the old days with ERP that came on a tape, and you mounted the tape and you spun it up in your data center, and it took months to get anything running, and then you had to spend months configuring it. Now you go to the vendor, you give them the credit card, or you sign the agreement, and they'll show you a demo system in no time. And if you prep them with some sample data, you can actually do a pretty nice hands-on demo. And so, to Peter's point, the way to do a modern cloud ERP is not to fill out a 10,000-page document. It's to bring people in a room and say, we have 4 ways to pay a bill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one works for you? Oh, I didn't know you did that. Let's dig deeper into that. Or I need 4A. So, hey, vendor, can you make it like that except a little bit of this? And the vendor goes away and comes back next week and goes, can I show it to you? And you can iterate through the process. And that's what people don't get. These consultants that Peter is describing make their money from filling out multi-thousand-page questionnaires with junior consultants. Throw that junk away. Stop buying cloud ERP with the old model. Start iterating. Start looking at it. Start playing with it. And it's about successive refinement. You know how you know you're done? You don't. Everybody gets together and goes, I think it's ready. You can almost do an ERP. Now, I wouldn't big bang an entire company that way, but depending on departmental solutions, particular functional solutions, you pretty much approach an MVP by iterating through the requirements. So that's the first thing, and it's a big one. The other one is don't pave the cow path. Re-engineering is a very important topic. It means stop doing process steps that don't add value. So start by re-engineering your process, and then automate the parts that you can't stop doing.
Love the point of iteration during this process and those check-ins, Wayne, to actually make sure that, hey, you might think 4 is great, but actually what we need is 4A within the way this is going to be done. Hey, vendor partner, can you work together and co-create this for our organization based on my feedback, right? That's a huge part of this new process or modern process relative to the old way of here's a software, you better make sure you can use it, right? Because it used to be, the software defines the process and that process defines how your business gets done. Now it is, there are processes built in the software that can be customized to actually be co-created against your objectives as an organization and your specific needs. Massive point, Wayne. Really great point. Kenny, over to you for your final couple points.
First off, I wanted to address something that Wayne said. I completely agree that the best way to do it is iterative. The problem is that when you're going to get funding from your board to do this project, nobody wants to know it'll be done when it's done. We got to do an iterative process because they want to know how much money is this going to cost us.
So true.
And so the only way to do that is the old school way of coming up with all the requirements first and having them nailed down so perfectly that once they get into it, because otherwise, if they give a broad range and say, well, you're going to be about here, once they get into it and find out, well, we uncovered this, we uncovered this, you end up going double, triple what the original estimate is. So I still don't have a good answer on how do you get to that number to give initially. But the biggest thing that I can advise is something that I think both Peter and Wayne have said, and that is that third party is so critical. Don't count on your vendor to tell you what you need or what it's going to take or to make sure that you've gotten everything right. And the chances are that you've got somebody in-house that's an expert in moving you to a cloud ERP is very unlikely. Otherwise, it's not going to be the case. So find somebody out there that does this as a job, that's not trying to sell you anything other than their own services and time to help you figure out how do we put the best price tag on this so that we're not, really taking a bath on this thing and getting big trouble over it. And how do we make sure that our documentation, our requirements are accurate and that they really provide what we need? We need that person who's saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then looking at this SOW in the contract and saying, hey, you really might want to be careful about that. That could bite you in the end because the vendor's not going to tell you that. And again, you don't have anybody in-house who has that level of experience. And then the final thing is exactly what Peter said. Don't count on people to be able to tell you what their needs are. You need software and you need systems. And that kind of leads into something else that we've been really looking at a lot outside of this discussion, and that's process mining. There's getting to be more and more software. Some of it which uses artificial intelligence becoming available that you can take advantage of that doesn't count on you to remember what you do. It figures out what you did and helps present that process that you can then say, oh, yeah, that's true. We do that. I forgot all about that case.
I love the point on process mining. It's something we paid a lot of attention to recently. And the level of innovation, especially now with AI being embedded into some of these process mining, and I should say AI and ML being built into these process mining tools, you're actually getting a whole new level of observability into the processes themselves. Great point. The other thing, Kenny, and I want to use this as an exclamation point next to the end of this discussion for our first part in this overall series, but the need to have, what they call in today's parlance, a trusted partner, right, within this process of going through an ERP project that isn't, is not in the pocket necessarily of the platform provider, the ERP platform provider, but is an independent voice in that process to work with you to make sure that what you are creating is within the context of what you can actually present through to your board. The other element is making sure that there's a level of contingency buckets and planning and those sorts of things that are built into that budget, because that's one of the biggest gotchas, right? If you get the board to sign off on this thing and you haven't actually built in a 10%, 20% contingency bucket of budget, then you're going back and you're begging for more, right? In the process of going through this, which if that more is 2 times, 3 times, like you were saying, Kenny, what the initial was, you're going to be, quite frankly, out of luck, right? And probably going to lose your job in that process. So all the importance of having that trusted partner be a part of this with you. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Again, as I mentioned, we're all going to be together. This is a lead up to Community Summit North America, running again in Charlotte, North Carolina from October 15th to the 20th. Come join us in our Circle of Excellence ERP Lounge, where we're going to have this group and others that are just going to be available to shoot the breeze with you, chat through some of the things that you're working with. Maybe you've got a troubled project, right? Or you're trying to reconsider, boy, how do I rethink these business requirements? Or how do I cut through some of these things that are happening out there? We're going to be there to help you. And this is all going to be part of your registration of just joining us at Community Summit North America. All right, folks, next time we are going to be breaking down something that I think we all are exposed to all the time, and that is all of the promises and all of the hype that we hear from some of the big ERP vendors that are out there. It's the easiest thing in the world. We've got every solution for you. It's plug and play. You're up in 30 days. All of those types of things. We're going to break some of that stuff down next time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Peter, Wayne, and Kenny, thanks for joining. See you all next time.